I'm Mark Seifter.
And I'm Linda Zayas Palmer.
And this is Arcane Mark Biased Reactions.
Welcome everyone to Biased Reactions, Bestiary 3,
That's
the
right.
third.
The third reaction to Bestiary 3.
We have been going through the book from the beginning, and we have just reached the letter E.
The letter E.
Last episode was all about the monsters that start with D, of which there are many.
There are always many monsters that start with D.
That is true. So, let's go ahead and jump right in.
Alright, so what do we got with E? It's the Einherji, which is the singular of Einherjar. They are chaotic neutral Aesir monitors. Mighty warriors chosen by Valkyries from the ranks of the slain. They are pretty cool. They can challenge their foe. They are good at killing Jotun because they think there's some kind of a Ragnarok type situation. They can try to instantly repair their shield, which they have a shield and a sword.
And they have champion abilities too.
Yes, they do. They are chaotic champions of chaos, plus attack of opportunity and shield block. So they've got like a little bit of mix and match, and they're pretty hard to pierce with piercing attacks. But they're good at other kinds of things. And also hard to make them be afraid. They're pretty good against fear.
And they're pretty good at inducing fear, too, with that intimidation bonus.
That's right. But let's move on to something cuter than that.
Wisps!
Wisps! That's right.
Ah! Oh, cute elemental
the little
balls.
elementals that I initially wrote in Bestiary 5, but these ones are completely not, it is not me again. I can't remember exactly which freelancer did everything in Bestiary 3 because I was only the lead at the end and Liz contracted a lot of it out.
They're spelled very slightly differently this time, with an I instead of a Y.
We wanted to spell them with an I all along, but for pagination reasons, Steven realized that it fixed the pagination if he spelled it with a Y.
Yes.
Because it came after Wormwraith, W-Y-R, instead of in a weird place that didn't work with the pagination.
Pagination sometimes requires creatures to be renamed.
So now their name is better because it has an I. But they still have symphonies and conductors and those kind of things that were from, like, the original lore from Bestiary 5. So, they're also much cuter. Like, look at those little faces. And they can be attuned to different other elemental creatures. The evil elemental lords kind of captured them because they were useful minions. They've got a resonance aura that gives bonuses to other creatures of their element, which can make them a pain to if they're added on to an encounter with like a much more powerful elemental. They can detonate themselves to try to give temporary hit points to their nearby allies and permanently destroy them. They all kind of have those two abilities, and then they like the air wisp flies and the earth wisp burrows around, and
they're better at aiding.
They are, because they never critically fail. Basically, they get a failure instead, and their successes are critical successes. So they are either gonna give you nothing or usually a +2, because it's not like they're a master or legendary in anything. Which is pretty solid. They're helpful friends, and the fire wisp has that little face where it's like, it does a little fire damage, and the water wisp can swim, of course, and can drench and put out fires. And they each have a different little vision thing. The water wisp ignores concealed from mist and fog. The fire wisp ignores concealed from smoke. Those two at the bottom. Whereas the Earth Wisp can burrow around and resist bludgeoning damage. They each have something a little different. The Air Wisp has a much faster fly speed than the Fire Wisp does. And Wisp Conductors often have bardic type abilities.
And are trained in performance. Thanks for the sub, Steven.
And Silver Knight, yes, they are kawaii, and they do look somewhat like Studio Ghibli spirits. And stay tuned for the kami. Although probably in next episode.
That is true. After the wisps, we have, let's see, Enocytes.
Enocytes. They are an astral family of creatures. The family name of Enocyte was not, like, completely known in Pathfinder 1st Edition, but some of these creatures are ones that you might remember from Pathfinder 1st Edition nonetheless. Such as, the Ioton is new. It's the kind of the low-level starting version of the Enocytes.
So what's their deal?
They're basically like random thoughts in the astral plane that can sometimes create a rudimentary intellect, but in order to actually get smart enough to be completely sapient, they need to leech thought from another creature. And when they do that, it sort of, by giving them persistent mental damage, they absorb the language of the creature, and they sort of kind of look like something familiar to that creature. And they're no longer an incorporeal mind thing, lose some immunities, and they become sort of able to have more of a sense of self. However, it's possible that over time they can parse right from wrong and realize that they're causing pain to the person who they got their thoughts from. At which point they might surrender their thoughts to that person. So that they're like, oh no, I'm hurting this person. And then they no longer realize that they're doing that.
So they keep doing that over and over again. Yeah.
Yes.
That is interesting.
Yep. They're the sort of the starting Enocytes. And then after that, we have
the Shul Sagas?
Everyone's favorite creature to make fun of from Pathfinder 1st Edition, the Shul Sagas.
Why were they everyone's favorite creature to make fun of from Pathfinder 1st Edition?
I don't know. They just, like, ride around on discs in the astral plane. They definitely had nicknames like Disc Dork or things like that. But they're cooler in 2nd Edition. Now they ride on bottle cap discs. But they are connected to the Enocytes, which gives them, like, a place to be. And they have slightly more roles in 2nd Edition that would allow them to interact with PCs in an interesting way, somewhat. Where they are, like, guardians. They raise other... raise Iotons to their permanent form, and they look for breaches and close planar rifts,
and sometimes recruit other people to help them in that quest,
which can allow them to recruit the PCs. Whereas in Pathfinder 1st Edition, it was just kind of like, they just don't want to be left alone, so leave them alone.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, okay.
When are we ever going to find them?
I can use these when I have a group of PCs who doesn't want to leave them alone.
Mm-hmm.
Or who needs to bother one of their planar rifts, and they're angry. So there's more to them now, and they've got some interesting abilities. Let's see, there's their Astral Recoil, where they can attack people who are astrally projecting and try to unproject them. And it's more likely that something bad happens to you if you're defeated while astrally projecting by them because of their astral shock. They ride around on a disc.
There's some more comments on the disc. Ride on manhole covers, and their discs are made from a big giant calendar stone.
Mm-hmm. That is true. It's called the Calendar Stone. It's a new piece of lore to make them cooler. We can quarry the stone discs that serve as the focus of their ability. They can hop on their disc as a free action. If they aren't on their disc, or hop off of the disc, they can find rifts. So they're basically they ride on discs still, but they do it in a cooler way, and their halberd looks cooler.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it lets them fly.
It does. So then we have another one from Pathfinder 1st Edition, the Callborn.
Another gross art here.
Yeah, but I mean, we need a family of astral creatures, don't we, that live on the astral plane that indicate how they're connected and how the weird thoughts, because the astral plane is the plane of thought or the mind essence, and so Callborn are just telepathic historians and prophets who gather together with giant brains that they live with in order to figure out what's going on and absorb information. They like it. They've got a collective with the other Callborns, and I remember when I first learned about these guys, I always thought that Callborn was like short for Cauldronborn, which it was not, and they had nothing to do with that. Or like some kind of Caliban type thing, but it's completely these brain creatures that have thought sense. They can consume the thoughts of others, where they hit you and they're like, I'm gonna consume your thoughts, and that can cause you to become very stupefied.
I assume particularly based on the art that it has to do with Call as in the amniotic membrane.
I think that's correct. Based on the way that it looks.
Yeah.
That is what the call is for. The call is coming from inside the astral plane. And they need to feed by like touching things and draining some of their thoughts. But other than that, they don't usually interact with other creatures other than for reasons of their own. And then what's there on the right is the Adakros, which is even more powerful form of Enocyte. When a nascent demiplane fails to complete into a demiplane, sometimes the spiritual essence of it will collapse and be absorbed by the astral plane into Adakros, which is a being of mental essence. They're very dangerous.
Oh, combines overwhelming mental potential with no exposure to alternate viewpoints.
Yes, they're very dangerous because of that reason. They make their own, like, sort of kingdoms where you have to validate them. They're so self-absorbed that they deny any version of reality but their own, so they automatically try to counteract enchantments and illusions on them. It's not an action. They just do. They can splinter off a sycophant as a reaction that's an Ioton that is just constantly validating them and giving them bonuses. But, I mean, it's really...
It gives them temporary hit points.
It's really easy to kill it because it's an Ioton.
Mm-hmm.
It happens as a reaction when they take 25 or more bludgeoning, piercing, or slashing damage in one hit that, like, Ioton fragments off of them. And, that's pretty funny. Plus, they have the Fatal Fantasia ability, which makes their attacks be Fatal D12 against creatures affected by their enchantment or illusion spells.
There's a question, is this the first sentient demiplane, is this the first sentient demiplane enemy in the system?
I would say it is not a demiplane enemy because it is...
The result of a failed...
some extra essence when a demiplane doesn't happen.
But it's very similar to that.
But Numivore is a sort of a sentient or semi-sentient demiplane. So that's one.
Thanks for gifting another sub, Elf.
Yeah. So yeah, those are the Enocytes. I think that it is a pretty interesting family of creatures. So next after that is the Unemvro. Not the last E, because we also have Eurypterids.
What is their deal?
So they are a little bit of weirdos. They come from the they say they come from the positive energy plane, and they wander around. Well, as you can see here, kind of looking like an Okapi. They wander around and they beat up undead. They are lawful. They don't really They think the concept of good and evil is pointless. The only thing that matters is
beating up undead.
Is to beat up undead with their fists. Which they do. And anything that's composed or animated by negative energy, really, because that is... It's anti-life, it shouldn't be creating things. They suplex things.
Oh, and they're immune to all death effects.
They are, and they're resistant to negative energy. Um, and so they kick with their foot, and they punch with their fist, and they do blessed strikes that deal positive damage if it's better, and they retributively suplex you if you try to hit them and critically fail. They'll just suplex you onto the ground, and they have a tide of creation where they channel their soul into searing positive energy, which causes a bunch of positive damage.
It tires them out a little bit, though, so they can't do that all the time.
That's true. It could also potentially blind things for a while. Honestly, for longer than most things will do a blind, but it is only on a critical failure.
Mm-hmm.
And they can only do it once, basically, because they're fatigued. That's the Unembro.
And then, as advertised, the Eurypterids.
Yes, they can be
common or spiny.
They can be quite tasty to some.
But they are quite poisonous as well.
They're very poisonous. They're sea scorpions. That are from ancient times, like the Cambrian era, normally. I think for us. But for them, they're here now in the Age of Lost Omens, and they like to kill you. I mean, they were apex predators back in the day where, like, the strats were, like, fish, or fish with armor, then, like, scorpion with stinger that can sting you was a pretty good strategy.
It was?
Nowadays, they're not really apex predators. But
the spiny ones are still pretty tough.
They are. Even the common Eurypterid is bigger than, like, ancient Eurypterids were. They've got attack of opportunity, which is, like, not a given for a Eurypterid to have. And, they can totally give you Eurypterid venom. I mean, my dad used to have a bunch of Eurypterids, before, like, the fire, and he lost his fossil collection. That was one of the things that he had a lot of. Fossils, and now you too can destroy a bunch of Eurypterids by fighting the Eurypterids here. The spiny Eurypterids have some cool spines where if you get grabbed by them, you take piercing damage.
That's pretty cool.
I think that's mostly it. The pincers grab you and the stingers poison you.
Elf says the spiny one has a picture at the end of the book on page 318.
That's probably true. Let's move on to the F's.
Festrog.
Festrog.
Oh, and that is definitely a festering Festrog in that art.
Oh, it's festering, all right. These Festrogs, those rascals. The Festrog are undead that are basically, they run around and they have pustules on them that are horrible, and when they take damage, deal poison damage. And they like to feast on things that they harm to get temporary hit points, and they can run around on all fours to go faster.
Oh, this one's yours?
That one is David the Gray's.
Oh, and I see they've become the reason why they are common now is that they've become more common since the creation of the Gravelands.
Yes.
Prowling the edges of one's peaceful farmland.
That's right.
Attacks that would have once been dismissed as the predation of wolf packs now awake a much greater degree of panic.
Thanks, Tarbafon.
Thanks, Tarbafon. You can thank Tarbafon for a lot of things.
I think Tarbafon deserves some plaudits here from everyone who likes their farms to have Festrogs.
I think a lot of people don't like their farms to have Festrogs.
But the Festrogs scare off the wolves.
It's not better. It's not better.
All right, what about fish?
Well, before we get to that,
well,
Unembro does not approve. Here's Unembro not approving.
Come on, Unembro. Be a Unembro.
He is being a Unembro by punching out the Festrogs from your farm.
Okay, but those Festrogs don't have a chance.
Yeah, they don't. They don't.
Unembro is way too strong against the Festrogs and will be retributively suplexing them all throughout the farm. However, Unembro doesn't have poison resistance, so like they might be able to nickel and dime Unembro, so Unembro is gonna have to use Tide of Creation and just kill all of the Festrogs. Because that is 27 damage, and they have to make
24 hit points.
They have 24 hit points, so unless I roll badly with my Unembro, they're going to have to make a Fortitude save that requires a 15 or higher, and on a failure, they'll probably die. And on a success, some of them will still be alive.
Yeah, and Festrogs don't have to have this. Festrogs can have any form. There's stuff here about how you can have, Ogre Festrogs or Beastkin Festrogs, or all sorts of things.
That's right. I mean, why would you not have a Beastkin Festrog? That seems like something that... Tarbafon's gonna do all the Festrogs.
He is.
What about Fish Festrogs? Can you have those?
I mean, you can use your imagination and have anything you want.
Fair enough. So we've got the pufferfish, which has a toxic body. So if you're like, I'm gonna poke this pufferfish, then you might be poisoned by pufferfish poison. And not only that, but also inflating rush, where it swims and then real fast, and then it suddenly inflates and tries to poison everything nearby.
Legit?
That's sort of its situation. Like, just think about how much it inflates and how many spikes it shoots out from the fact that it's tiny and it still managed to poison everybody that was adjacent to its base at the end.
That's a lot of spikes.
A lot of spikes. And then also a piranha swarm. Why not a piranha swarm?
A classic, a classic troporific fish enemy.
You could have one piranha, but why not a swarm? They can sense your blood in the water from up to a mile away, because that's what piranhas can do.
And enter a feeding frenzy.
I mean, they should enter a feeding frenzy. And guess what? If you have bleed damage, you take a -2 circumstance penalty to your saves against feeding frenzy while the damage continues, as the piranha's frenzy increases in intensity when they smell blood. That seems like what I would expect piranhas would probably do. And that's what they do. What about our next one?
Flumph!
It's a flumph. Everyone's favorite lawful good space aberration. They love swearing and fulfilling oaths. It's very important to them. Incomplete oaths make them anxious. They want to protect people from cosmic horrors.
Check in if they believe they promised something. They've been promised something, often with irritating frequency. You said you would give me this. Are you about to give it to me? Remember, you promised.
Yeah, it's not necessarily like, are you about to give it to me if they're not near the deadline, but it's like, I just want to check in to remind you that, like, in a month, you said you were going to do this, right?
In 29 days, you said you were going to do this,
We're still up for that in 3 weeks and 2 days, right? Okay, good. Just checking in. They're jellyfish-like creatures, and they're good-natured, and they self-impose their duty to protect you from the dark tapestry. Also, they have some very amusing abilities, such as spray perfume, where they spray a 20-foot line of foul-smelling liquid, which they consider to be perfume, which has quite an odor. And in fact, the way that they fly is also by spewing out gas. So that's just the kind of thing that they do.
And they can be knocked upside down and have a little trouble flipping themselves back over.
They do have an issue with that. If they're not prone and they land on their back, they become immobilized. So that could be an issue. But they also have little spikes with acid on it. And they hatch from pods flung into outer space from the Flumph homeworld in a ritual known as the seeding. So that is the deal with Flumphs. They're very obsessed with dream journals. They're a strange one. That's for sure. Speaking of Strange One, there's the Fortune Eater, which is a new rare monster that is basically like a undead spirit of a adventuring party that TPK'd, kind of. So it's a collective entity where you just like, you know, you were fighting this severe encounter and you had bad luck and everybody died.
And they seek to bring their bad luck onto you.
That's
with
sure
an aura
true.
of unluck, and with an aura of unluck and luck osmosis, which when they make you roll 2d20s and take the lower result, they're like, I'm gonna take that higher number and see if I can use it for myself.
They wait until the higher number is really good and you're really frustrated that you didn't get it, and then they just store that.
It's like, oh, you rolled a 20 and a 3.
I'm gonna take that 20 and I'm gonna use that on my next d20 roll.
Yep.
So, too bad to be you. And they've got a team attack where they attack with, like, all sorts of different weapons that the TPK party has. They make their ghostly longsword, ghostly dagger from the rogue, ghostly longsword from the fighter, ghostly longbow from the ranger, I guess, or whatever, in any order. And although wait, they had a light mace, so it probably means the light mace from the cleric, I guess, or whatever it is.
Well, I'm sure it'd be easy to create variant Fortune Eaters.
Yes, that were a different TPK party.
Yes.
They rejuvenate anytime, but the only way they can move on to the afterlife
is by being instrumental.
By being instrumental to completing a heroic deed. Although it doesn't have the full text of the ghost-like rejuvenation, fact that they do rejuvenate, but presumably that's what it's meant to do.
Yes.
And of course they're incorporeal. They also speak the language spoken by the adventurers who TPK, typically Common, Dwarven, Elven, and Goblin. So, yeah, that's Fortune Eaters. They sometimes babble about the strange fates of their party.
When it talks about there too that like their jealousy, rage, and powers of bad luck make it very unlikely that they're going to be the ones who help heroes succeed in a quest.
That is completely true. But it's also like they always tell tales of impossible foolhardiness or bravery, and so it could be interesting if your party TPKs and you send in a new group to like have a Fortune Eater from the old party that's like, oh yeah, we did this thing that you knew that your TPK party did.
Yeah, and as one of the commenters in chat pointed out, you can see that this Fortune Eater here was made from Pathfinders because of the Wayfinder that is right front and center.
That is definitely true. And it mentions that the Pathfinder Society lodges are one place where you could definitely see Fortune Eaters congregating. Also near fortune tellers and other places like that. But yeah, it's definitely a group of Pathfinders. Maybe even one Pathfinder and some Pathfinder contacts. Those contacts never survive.
Oh, Pathfinder contacts.
Yes.
What about foxes?
What about foxes? Well, you've got a basic red fox, which, like, is not that dangerous of a creature overall. Damage is actually pretty pathetic. It can do a leaping pounce, but its damage is pretty awful even for a level -1 creature. What does it have to its advantage to make up for the fact that its damage is really bad? Well, I mean, it is an agile attack, so, but it still is doing like half of what an agile attack would do. It is even more accurate than the already very accurate level -1 creature, so I think that's what it is. It's incredibly accurate, and it can move and attack with its leaping pounce. So it's mobile, it's extremely accurate, it's pretty fast, and its damage is pathetic. And Taldor the Hunt is an ancient ceremony where you hunt for foxes. The Fading Fox, on the other hand, is level 2, and they are still animals, but they are actually pretty dangerous. Although their damage is also really, really low for a level 2 creature, but they are... It's less of a percentage loss. It's like they do 4.5. I mean, it's about half.
They've got sneak attack too.
But oh right, I thought their damage was better than that.
Yeah,
so they've got sneak attack. So they're fine. They do exactly what you would expect for an agile attack with their sneak attack, which is still a little low that it goes only to that after sneak attack. But they've got plenty of other abilities at the level 2 Fading Fox because they have trackless steps, so they can just, you can't track them. They can vanish into the wilds where they hide and then sneak, hide and then sneak.
They can hide as a reaction.
Yeah, that's a pain. Where it's just like, oh, I'm in natural surroundings. Oh no, you found me. I'm going to hide again. So, yes. It's like, oh, you moved towards me and targeted me with an ability. I'm going to hide again. I guess that I'm hidden now. Maybe you have to make a DC 11 check.
Yep.
So they're a pain to have to deal with, but at least their damage is not like super high, even with the sneak attack damage. But it's not that low either. So beware of Fairy Foxes.
What about Galvos?
What about Galvos?
A massive
They're
electric,
made of electric eels.
Massive electric eels.
Yes.
Which you can probably guess are aberrations based on that description.
You remember when we had to fight them in Skull and Shackles.
I do remember when you had to fight them in Skull and Shackles.
Yep. They are a swarm of eels that have turned into a creature.
And the swarm can hug you. They
can. With their squirming embrace. They stride and then squirmingly embrace you. They can also just collapse into a shapeless swarm of eels if they want to, and they have an electrical field that jolts for electricity damage. Why wouldn't they do that? I mean, they're a swarm. But the thing is, they're a little bit shy about eating, so they like to feed in private. So...
Aw, they're shy evil aberrations.
Yeah, I mean, they want to eat something at least halfling-sized. In fact, a halfling's so small, you might hunt for something while you're digesting the halfling. Oh yeah, they're totally evil, but they're shy about eating. They like to eat in private. They might have been engineered by enemies of sea devils and Algol because they like attacking them, even though they're evil. Alright, speaking of things that are enemies of other things, the Garuda, which are enemies of, they hate Nagas. So, they just hate them. Mother of all Garudas was tricked into slavery by the wicked Serpent Queen. They don't like Nagas.
Nagas are evil serpents or other aberrant Ophidian
creatures. Mostly Nagas.
Yes.
And they are chaotic good celestials.
From Elysium.
That's right. And they're often Ungolian. There's some, but they're mostly in Vudra or Jalmaray. And they live in isolated places where they shoot you with their shock composite lumbo, especially if you are like a Nagaji or something, I guess.
They can flap their wings to create a blast of wind.
They've got a swooping dive,
and they've also got a collection of innate divine spells such as At Will True Strike, which is quite useful.
That is very dangerous. They've got some invisibilities, freedom of movement, haste, a lot of useful utility spells that can make them a pain for any sort of snake that you're having to deal with.
Well, just don't be an evil snake monster.
I mean, it doesn't say that they like good Nagas. It says that they loathe Ophidian creatures, Nagas in particular, and they will go out of their way to hunt down a Naga if they hear even the tiniest hint of a rumor suggesting the presence of one. So...
Now I'm just imagining it's like they see someone doing something evil, the person's like, yes, but did you know that there's a Naga over there? What?
Hi, Nicole. So, let's see. There's also Gathlane.
More good aligned winged creatures.
Chaotic
These
good.
ones Fae.
Plant Fae. Born of magical trees in seed pods, Gathlane have vine-laced wings. When they die, their last final shape is a cloud of toxic mist. For these particular Gathlane wanderers, anyway. These Gatling Wanderers have root bound, where they can sprout woody roots from the tip of their wings to bind an adjacent creature's limbs to try to grab a creature. They can fly around. They have a hide and seek ability with non-magical foliage. Some of these are probably abilities from the Wanderer part of them, and some of them are probably abilities from the Gathlane part of them.
Yes.
Yep. They're particularly fond of gnomes because of gnomes being exiled Fae. But gnomes don't really like Gathlane.
They really like knowledge.
Yep. Gnomes don't really like Gathlane, though, because they feel that Gathlanes are super gossipy and flighty. So it's sort of one-sided.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, Gathlane like knowledge. They have nigh endless questions. It can feel like an interrogation to even deal with them. Oh! What about this? Are you sure?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
yep.
But, what about that? Oh, what's that magic item that you have due?
What about that magic item? How did you get it? Where did it come from?
Oh.
Yep.
Where are you from? Etc., etc.
What about another plant creature, Goran?
Goran are even rarer than Gathlane because they come from like a very limited number of Gorus seeds that were created and implanted with memories. They are a extremely delicious and nutritious plant creature. This Goran manipulator has some abilities that have an appetizing aroma, where creatures may be distracted by the amount that they want to eat the Goran, and they're very delicious, and they take extra damage from jaws and fangs and other things where you could eat them because they taste so good.
Mm-hmm.
And they can do an anguish manipulator cry, where they can potentially cause you to take penalties when you hit them with a melee attack. And it looks like they've got some occult spells and primal spells as well. So my guess would be that the occult spells and maybe like the anguish cry are kind of manipulatory things.
Yeah, and then the primal innate spells are probably
came from, like,
and the delicious and appetizing aroma probably come from
came
Goran.
from Goran related activities.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Something like that. But as we know, if you look at any monsters in Bestiary that are with ancestries, they often have like early access to ancestry feats in exchange for like not really having almost any class stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Because that way it makes more sense. Like for a PC, when you're playing a wizard or fighter or a monk, you want your character to feel like a wizard or fighter or a monk, and not like it's like, oh, I'm mostly a kobold, but I guess I have a little bit of monk stuff.
Yeah.
But when you're fighting a kobold versus a Goran and a catfolk, and they're all monks, it's more interesting if they all feel different because you're fighting a kobold, a catfolk, and a Goran, and so the monsters do exactly the opposite, where they double down on ancestry stuff and get it sooner, and then they just don't have as much other things. Alright, so speaking of things that might either you might like to eat them, or they might like to eat you.
Langools.
Langools. They're like ghouls, except, and this is true,
they're from
Lang.
Yes.
Yes, that's right. They are smarter than other ghouls because they absorb the memories from the corpses that they devour. They have Lang ghoul fever, which is like ghoul fever, except it's from Lang. They can paralyze you, which is pretty similar to ghoul paralysis. They have sneak attack. They can cast arcane, divine, and occult spells from scrolls. That's right, but not primal. Not primal spells from scrolls.
Yes, no, they are not well aligned with primal tradition.
That's true. But they're well aligned with the Elder Mythos.
Yes.
They're very well aligned from that.
Is everything from Lang simply better than the common
Well,
form?
let's see. I would say a denizen is not as good as a denizen of Lang at killing things. A spider, just like a regular spider
It's
versus
not as good at killing things as a
Lang
Lang
spider
spider
is much more dangerous than that.
A Lang ghoul is much more dangerous than a regular ghoul.
A library of Lang might be better than a library. So I don't know. I guess everything from Lang is more powerful
dangerous
and dangerous
powerful,
than another thing that's not from Lang. And elves are not protected from Lang ghoul paralysis. That's correct, Elf Tarot.
Mm-hmm.
And neither are Elf Tarots.
Uh-oh.
And it talks about the fact that sometimes Lang ghouls make libraries of bodies so that they can rip off a chunk of the appropriate body to get the appropriate kind of memories from them. So you look and you think you see a slaughterhouse of preserved corpses, but it's actually a library.
This is a library. It's a Lang ghoul library because they are just horrifying like that.
Yep.
Moving on from the terrors of Lang. What about some more giants?
What about some more giants?
We've got cave giants and desert giants here.
Yep, cave giants sometimes tame reptiles like monitor lizards or salamanders to be their friends. And by friends, I mean maltreated pets or guardian beasts. So yeah, cave giants, they live in a cave. They like to smear things.
Oh, I see. They grab you if you're next to a wall or vertical surface, they'll just smear your blood on that surface by rubbing you into it.
Yep, they smear you into the surface.
Yeah.
It's not good for you, and they can throw rocks at you and catch rocks like many giants can. They're chaotic evil, and they basically don't care about your opinion. They just want to wear stinking hides festooned with rotting skulls, defend their territory, and they're cautious about that. They do use traps. You might think that they're just going to rush out and attack you, but they won't. And they also enjoy murder.
Yes.
Additionally, there's desert giants.
Desert giants.
They are not chaotic evil.
They protect oases.
They're nomadic. They move through the desert, and they have strong cultural traditions. And they swipe around with scimitars at everything, and are lawful. They spin around in the sand, which can create emanations of sand that can conceal them. They can walk in the sand. They can blitz you with scimitars where they stride up to their speed and then strike with each of their scimitars.
And like all giants, they can throw rocks at you.
I mean, they like to throw rocks at you. That's part of their strong cultural traditions. They don't like alcohol very much, and are austere.
They have a lot, but they have they have a strong oral tradition.
Yes, and they like jokes or parables. What about other giants?
Tomb giants.
Tomb giants and plague giants. Okay, so tomb giants are like undead generals that use scythes and have like a font of death that just, when something dies, they turn it into a vessel of negative energy that they can make it explode for massive damage, which is pretty funny for them.
Their claws just doom you.
Yep, why not? Doom 1, they can bind undead. They can create undead. They like undead. And, of course, they can throw rocks.
Because they're giants.
They're giants.
Mm-hmm.
They're also elder tomb giants who've animated hordes of undead. And they like to create undead giants. Especially taiga giants. That's the fun one. But then there's also plague giants, which are even more powerful than tomb giants. Even though they might not look it.
There's something they like to throw even more than rocks. And that is corpses.
Corpses, possibly plagued corpses. I mean, always plagued corpses. That can cause more plagues. And they also can do a Pustulant Flail, which does poison damage because their flail is covered with pus. Because that, I mean, wouldn't you cover your flail with pus if you were a plague giant?
I mean, probably, but fortunately, none of us here is a plague giant.
That's good, and I don't think we have the atrophic plague either, which is good for us. It's got Cloud Kill and Death Knell, plus the Take Its Course ability from the Indulgence domain. They've got a flail that has all the pus on it. They can scratch you anytime you try to make a melee strike against them. They're just gonna scratch you. They're pretty big and they're pretty pustulant and
just generally unpleasant.
Fetid, and they are
24 feet tall.
They're extremely xenophobic and neutral evil, and they have close ties to the Horsemen of Pestilence, Apollyon.
Steven asked if we're going to talk about every monster, and that is the plan, yes, and he says we should do this for Bestiary 1 and 2 as well.
Well, this is our biased reaction, so we're going to be biased about all of these creatures, unless we have no bias, and we're just like, oh, Gertabalu, I guess I'm not biased about them. Are you biased about them?
We can be biased about them. I remember we had these guys showed up in a Pathfinder Society scenario. That was when I first learned about their role as guardians.
Yes, well, I mean, Gertabalu are a mythological creature that like share their origin all the way back to the Epic of Gilgamesh, where Gilgamesh just finds these Gertabalu around and is talking to them, and they're also in the Enuma Elish, so they're pretty darn ancient creatures.
Mm-hmm. And as fitting that they guard sites that are tied to lost traditions.
That's right. And they are not the only creatures in this book that do that. Moff-Tats do as well. They have like huge similarities, and so there's a sidebar about the fact that they might share territory with Moff-Tats.
They usually collaborate with Garudas or sometimes even wisdom-seeking Nagas, so long as there's
not at the same time.
Not at the same time. Not at the same time.
But they're even more similar to Moff-Tats than Garudas and Nagas. That they definitely guard. They guard ruins. They're very faithful. They're in fact led by Gertabalu seers that are much more powerful and have a divine aegis. They're like kind of oracle type dealios. The regular Gertabalu can stride in the desert. They've got scorpion venom, of course they do. They've got scorpion-like abilities because they're scorpion people. They can constrict you. They can sting you with their poison or grab you with their pincers. They've got a long spear. They've got all sorts of tricks up their sleeve when it comes to a Gertabalu. And of course the seer has spontaneous divine spells because they're basically an oracle. Oracle of Scorpions. Their curse is Scorpion. And their mystery is Scorpion. So that's
should we suggest that if we do the other Bestiary ones, we should start at the back of the book and work forward since we're going back in time.
We're going back in time.
Back in time.
Oh my. Let's see. The Geliminal. Geliminal are
What's their deal?
They're very unusual and are kind of incredibly complicated creatures, and I'll just start off by saying this is like the worst monster in the game to combine with other monsters in terms of will it actually be an effective encounter. You have to combine it with other Geliminals, pretty much, or nothing.
Mm-hmm. Why is that?
Well, they come from the positive energy plane, and they see themselves as doctors who will heal you from the affliction of mortality.
That
positive
sounds
energy.
Really ominous.
Yeah, they'll heal you with positive energy and bring you back into being an immortal positive energy thing by just giving you healing. Like, they basically mostly don't attack you. And I mean, I guess you can combine them with other creatures and use their scintillating claw and their radiant ray attacks. You could. But their main deal is that they magically link to a living creature which glows with a bright light, and they get that creature gets fast healing 10. Anytime they need to defend against an attack or attempt to save, the Gliminal can use their own AC or save, which mostly is there to make sure that this person doesn't like try to intentionally tank their AC or saves so their allies can hurt them. Because they have fast healing 10, and when they grant positive healing that would heal you above your maximum hit points, including the fast healing, the excess is granted as temporary hit points. Unlike normal, they combine with each other and they last for an hour. If a creature's temporary hit points from Gliminal ever exceeds its max HP, aka if it ever heals you for an amount equal to your hit points, minus any damage you've been taking, then you become overloaded and explode. And if you have temporary hit points for overpowered healing, you become sickened. Or sickened 2 if you're halfway to exploding. So, yeah, they've got a Radiant Mantle that dazzles you. They've got 3rd level heal at will, which they can use to just keep healing you up. So, and then there's a sidebar that's like, there aren't default rules for a creature choosing to be hit to avoid exploding from a Gliminal's healing. You can allow an ally to improve their outcome by 1 degree of success against a willing target, or allow the target to worsen the result of their save by 1 step. So it's like, this would have missed, but it hits because you're trying to be hit.
Stab me to get rid of these temporary hit points. Yeah.
Yep.
Very tricky.
That's right. Speaking of tricky, Globster.
Globster
is not a lobster.
It is a globster. That G is very important.
Well, yes, and like a globster is already from, I think that's just like a real world term for an unidentified organic mass that washes up on a shoreline of an ocean.
Yep.
So.
And it's really gross and stinky.
Yes. And when it's killed, it decays into a massive goo. But it's always gross and stinky and horrible.
It has an aura of stench, and its slaps are, and it's a nauseating slap.
That's right.
Where you become increasingly sickened as.
And it can survive for 1 hour out of the water, but then it drowns. The main fun thing about them is that they consume living creatures, but digest only a portion. And eventually, they spit out a new globster to help devour everything nearby. And basically, if you have a globster that has enough food in order to spit out another globster automatically, then you treat that encounter as if it was against 2 globsters. That was something we had to figure out during the book, because like the way it was in Pathfinder 1st edition and also in the turnover about the globster was just that like sometimes it had enough, and there was a way to specify like when it gets enough, and it's like sometimes it starts with enough, but it was only 1 level 5 creature worth.
Yeah, but
and
it should
you
be 2.
still have to fight 2 of them. So we were like, no, you know what?
If it starts with enough,
if it has enough to make you fight 2 level 5 creatures, then
as a free action,
you should count it as 2 level 5 creatures. Yeah. Because there's way too much variance between the one that had it and the one that did not.
Makes sense.
Yep. So, what about Golem?
Golems.
Yes.
So we got fossil golems and mithril golems here.
That's right. So fossil golems obviously are made by someone who likes Tyrannosauruses for hands and for everything. And
I mean the shoulders are Triceratops.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, why wouldn't you want Triceratops horns on your shoulders? So you can try to find actual fossils, or you can just kill live dinosaurs and fossilize the bones yourself, if you prefer. But all golems have a golem anti-magic, where they're immune to all magic, except there's some magic that harms them, some magic that heals them, some magic that slows them, and some that does some weird other thing. That's just a thing that golems have, and so do these golems. Fossil golems, their deal is they are harmed by cold and water, they are healed by acid, they are slowed by earth, And their vulnerability is that stone to flesh negates their anti-magic and resistance to physical damage for a round.
They can change their shape, reassemble themselves to expand their reach at the cost of their speed.
That's probably where, like, they pull bones out from their legs or something and just make, like, a really super long Tyrannosaurus arm, or head thing that can bite you with their giant Tyrannosaurus jaws. Plus, they can fossilize you each round. The first time you take damage each round from their jaws, make a fortitude save or be slowed. And then you could be petrified permanently if you are slowed again. So that's pretty annoying.
And Mithril Golems are even more flexible in their form. They can completely liquefy themselves. I like the sidebar here talks about how you might have a particularly devious enemy that just stores one of them in a jar and then has it spray out at you, and then suddenly you're fighting a Mithril Golem.
That's right. Gonna put one in a jar, and they have evasion, which most monsters do not have. Their golem anti-magic, harmed by cold and water, healed by transmutation of any kind, slowed by electricity, and they're vulnerable to slow. Not the electricity that slows them, but the actual slow spell.
Yes.
Even though it's a transmutation, it doesn't heal them. It affects them normally, and they're permanently quickened, which can be annoying for people who have to deal with their quickenedness, which it can use to step or stride. So, I mean, if you slow them, it's not necessarily hurting them that much, but it still will get rid of that extra action pretty much, more or less. And they can make a spike storm where they shoot spikes at everything. Spikes!
How about the Green Man?
You mean also known as Leshy King?
Yes, Leshy Kings.
Or even just Leshies in ancient manuscripts. So they, Druids consider the first Green Man to be the original source of the rituals for creating, like, regular Leshies.
So these are a lot more
possibly
more
arboreals
closely,
and other intelligent plants.
These are a lot more closely tied to what Leshies are in folklore.
They are, although they're more tied to, like, the Green Man in folklore, which is a similar but not exactly the same folkloric creature.
Yeah.
That shows up in iconography in different parts of the world than Leshy, but it is certainly closer to the folkloric Leshy. And Leshies are the most likely ancestry to worship Green Men, which are deific enough that they can be worshipped. They are ancient, enigmatic, lesser deities of primeval forests, and there's rules for worshipping Green Men if you want to. You can have edicts about plants, and anathema of being mean to plants, and follower alignments, plus their spells. You've got everything you need to worship Green Men, although they typically only allow intelligent plants, such as Leshies, to be their clerics. If another creature proves to be a friend of plants and is vetted by the Green Man, then they will be wholeheartedly accepted. This strange fleshy worshipper.
This strange fleshy worshipper
That's
respects
right.
the plants.
That's right. And they kind of tend to ignore animals, which to them includes sapient creatures such as humans. But good and evil Green Men do not. Good are more friendly, and evil are like, haha, let's grow rare and dangerous plants and spread fear and devastation and use the animals to hunt for sport.
Yes.
And they're not really necessarily male at all, even though Green Man is just kind of the name for them. But they're natural power creatures, so they might not care about the concept of gender, and even those who do can be any gender. But they are beings of vital essence, just like the ones that embody Leshies, but much more powerful than that. So they're made of life essence, rather than spiritual essence.
Yes, and they do have the Leshy trait.
They do have the Leshy trait. Well, because they have everything that's true about Leshies is true about them. Which can also includes their ability to speak with plants, for example, with their green tongue ability. That's something Leshies can do, and their ability to transform into a plant. That's something Leshies can do. They have plant sense. They have more things than that though, because they have plant sense where they can kind of observe things within 60 feet. But they also can observe living and undead creatures within 60 feet of any plant matter that's within 120 feet. So if you're within 60 feet of them, because they are a plant, or 60 feet of any other plant, but within 120 total feet, they can see, including through solid barriers. They don't care.
They know where you are.
As long as they're plants, there's not a barrier between the plant and you.
And they have a vulnerability to axes.
Axes and fire.
But are resistant to bludgeoning and piercing damage.
They sure are. Plus, their green caress ability is an aura, incapacitating aura that slowly can transform living creatures into non-creature plants, just kind of like inanimate plants, if they want to. And that will slow you until you become a plant. And you'll need a powerful primal phenomena or something to get that to end. As a reaction, they can root you in place, which can be fun if you're trying to move away. I mean, not for you. But
not for you, but for them.
They can. Their vines have are deadly, and they have thorns.
They absorb magic, counteracting your spells and turning them into temporary hit points for themselves.
I'm actually surprised the vines don't have any reach, but maybe that's in maybe that's somewhere else in the description and I'm missing it. I'll put in a I've got a note for that while I'm at it. So yeah, I would think that the vines should have reached like the original green man, and the fact that it can attack up to 6 creatures with its vine forest, it seems like it should.
I made a note. Well, we can take a look at that.
Yep, they've got a ton of rituals they can do, like awakening plants and using primal call, but only on plants because it's they're green rituals. They can embed their thorns into creatures, which make it so you can't fly or airwalk, and they can focus their vines on a single target as well as using their vine forest ability. Plus, they absorb magic. They leech away magic and transform it into life essence for themselves. Their vines can basically counteract your magic. Plus, they have powerful 10th level primal spells, so they're pretty dangerous. Speaking of things that aren't quite so dangerous, Gremlins!
On the opposite end of the power scale.
That's right. They're definitely less dangerous.
We've got the Grimple Gremlins infested with gremlin lice with gross putrid vomit. Actually, just used these the other day in a first level game that I'm running for Mark.
That's right.
Was looking for another super low level gremlin to be part of a particular scheme. Got the pilfering thieves, the Hanover Gremlins.
Yep, they are pretty cool. So every type of gremlin that exists, like, that has some way that they like to sabotage or screw things over. That's sort of their deal. So Grimples are kind of anti-civilization in the way that they use lice and vomit and all that kind of yucky stuff to make things worse. Whereas Hanovers are considered among the most benign types of gremlins, which means they're still chaotic evil. They don't actively sabotage their environment as much, but they are constantly curious and stealing things. Which is, not as bad as most other gremlins, but they still can, like, rearrange your possessions so you don't know where anything is.
And it's going to take you more actions to use your objects.
Sailors just don't like it. They'll affix, basically, a Mary Hanover, which is a raised, dried carcass that's taxidermied
To look
to
like
look
a
like
dead
dead
Hennifer?
to scare away Hannivers.
But if a Hennifer discovers that that's being used to scare them
They
away,
get
then they
really
get really,
angry.
really upset and target those people specifically.
And then Fuaths, which are less benign than Hannivers, also aquatic. And their deal is that they basically sever rat lines and sails and smash sextants and soil provisions and just screw over a ship that's at sea. In all sorts of ways that will make the people on the ship in big trouble.
And they also attack at night because they're vulnerable to sunlight.
That's right. And they'll also eat sailors when the sailors can't make it. They can drown you with their viscous choke ability. And they also have claws, which for a tiny creature are pretty big crab claws, as you can see in the picture. They're like, ah. Sometimes lone Fuaths appoint themselves as guardians of nature to protect a spawning ground from overfishing. But mostly they just sabotage boats.
Mm-hmm. That's their thing.
Alright. What about Grioth? They are evil bat creatures from the dark tapestry. They have cultists who worship elder mythos.
Such as Nyarlathotep.
In the form of Haunter in the Dark, the bat version of Nyarlathotep, which has different statistics than regular Nyarlathotep.
Which appear in the sidebar on this page.
That's right. They love apocalypses and darkness. They're evil, four-eyed bat grioths, and they've got scouts, and they don't have to breathe because they are space bats.
They've got this strange material called void glass that they use as well.
They use echolocation, even though in space no one can hear you echolocate. They can shock your mind with their weird void glass, which can deal some extra mental damage and then maybe confuse you. They've got some occult magic. Their void glass is like very special material that Grioth in particular can use for additional advantages, and they've got cultists of elder mythos, which includes not only Haunter in Dark, but also Azathoth and Nimbaloth and Yog-Sothoth and other Oths.
Other Oths that are bad news.
It's gotta either be the Haunter in Dark or an Oth.
Yes.
So like a Goth or a Grioth. I mean, they're Grioth. They probably were like, we like you if you end in Oth, like us. And if you were in other settings, like in the Forgotten Realms, maybe they would worship Loth. I don't know. They just like deities that end in Oth.
They do.
Maybe the Haunter in Darkness, and Haunter in the Dark is also like that's just a name with like words. It's not a proper noun.
Maybe
so
they had to do that
their name for Haunter in the Dark is probably like Hauntoth or something like that. In their language, but Haunter in the Dark is just sort of a title.
They would not appreciate this conversation mocking their gods.
I mean, look, okay, all of the ones with proper names end in Oth.
No, I know.
And there's more Elder Mythos gods than those three.
That is true.
What are the chances that you pick 3 Elder Mythos gods by name, and they all end in Oth, whereas you also, the Grioth, also end in Oth?
You're okay, fair. You're right. Maybe there is some cultural significance.
And their name is like griot, who are storytellers from, right? But with an Oth. So maybe that means that they tell stories about things that end in Oth.
Flawless logic there, Mark. Flawless logic.
Yep.
How about guardian beasts?
Well, guardian beasts are pretty cool. They have sometimes been known in Pathfinder First Edition as like foo creatures, but that's not really an accurate name for them. Mm-hmm. So guardian beast is a much more accurate name, which
the Stoneland Cup is playing with a stone ball.
Yes, well, they're often depicted with like the little stone lions, so there's stats for the little ones and the big ones as well. And they're a little different than the original stats for like food lions from Pathfinder First Edition as well, but they are more accurate to the legends of those types of creatures. And once again, like the Imperial Dragons, Yvonne did these, so we could be pretty confident about their accuracy to the legends. So, yeah, they can predict storms, supposedly. They just kind of stand by it in their vessels. So, they're kind of an incorporeal celestial that is anchored into a stone body.
Oh, that's cool.
Which is a pretty complicated situation for them, but the rules for them aren't as complicated as they could be.
Yeah. I was just saying above that they usually appear in bonded pairs who complement each other in nature, such as a jokester and a gloomy one, a nurturing one and a strict one.
That's right. And they're sometimes depicted with their young. And stone lion cubs are curious, playful, and occasionally accidental mischief makers. And they anchored into a bonded vessel. They must remain within 1 mile of it. Their bonded vessel gives them a bunch of abilities. When they're not in their vessel, they actually kind of lose a lot of things. But when they are in their vessel, they gain a bunch of other abilities from being in their bonded vessel.
Which explains why you almost always would encounter them within their vessel.
That's right. Because they don't even really have an attack when they're not in their vessel. So they probably want to have a jaw attack. Which makes a lot of sense. Oh, I see. And they're not exactly incorporeal when they're not in the vessel either. They're not. They don't have spirit or incorporeal, but they do. They do have a fly speed and are kind of a spiritual body. Oh no, there we go. It is.
There it is, spirit body.
When not inhabiting the vessel, it has incorporeal and gains resistance 3 to all damage, and it loses that when it goes into the vessel. Yeah, that's what I thought. And then the regular stone lion has all of that plus
and a ferocious
roar. Rawr, rawr. Plus, if you kill them, they'll just kind of reform it at their bonded vessel. But if you break their vessel, you must first repair the vessel
before they can return.
Yes. And if the vessel is completely destroyed, then it actually destroys them. That's how you destroy a stone lion.
What about the Guekubu?
The Guekubu. So they're basically just somebody who is so bad and so evil that their evil imprinted the earth itself that they were buried in. Even you killed them and you burned their bones around and scorched bones and rotted flesh and the befouled earth can form a Guekubu. They even have the earth trait, earth and undead.
And they go after whoever they feel is responsible for their death.
Yes, they're very selfish, so they always kind of blame somebody else for what happened to them, even though it's their own issues that really caused this. And so, yeah, they have the earth trait. They're going to bite you with their wrathful misfortune that causes you to become clumsy and be bad at initiative. They can break the ground with razor-sharp rock attack. They can glide through the earth, shove you into the earth, which can be a pain until you can escape. It's very annoying to be shoved into the earth. I mean, I've never been shoved into the earth, but I can imagine it would be annoying.
Yes.
And they can, they resist electricity and physical damage, except bludgeoning, where you kind of knock out their earth chunks with a hammer. So, yeah, they're pretty obnoxious, I would say. What about the Hadronex?
What are these guys? Are these new?
Yeah. I mean, so are the Unembros, for that matter. They are kind of an aberration that evolve rapidly to try to handle weird situations that happen to them. So, as a reaction, if they take damage, they evolve. And when they evolve, they reconfigure their energy gland to change their resistance and their energy ray to do the same kind of damage. if it's energy type. And if it's physical damage, then it changes arm strike to the physical damage type that it took. So they can decide, it's like, oh, I'm facing a fire enemy, I can evolve to resist their fire, or maybe I can keep my other element if they're weak to that or they're resistant to fire. But like a PC wizard probably isn't resistant to fire, but may still throw out fireballs. And they can extend their limbs out to have ridiculous reach for a quick 2 attacks. They vent out their energy from their energy gland, but then at that point they lose their energy resistance and energy ray until they use rapid evolution again. But it's just like, oh, well, I'll just get rid of this fire. It actually does a lot of damage, considering that it's a single action, so it can be pretty dangerous.
Yeah.
Hadronex. Speaking of Hadronex, shall we, what do you think, Linda? Shall we do some more H's, or do you think that since we finished G's and did the first H, that's a good place to stop?
I think we've been going for over an hour now, so we should probably...
Alright. Well, that makes sense. And we've got through E through G, so we've got even more yet to come. With hags as our next thing. So in that case, let's say goodbye to YouTube.
And next time we will start with hags.
Bye, YouTube!